No, bigger is not better. You're gonna have to go on a diet. You are gonna have to go on a diet. Okay, so let me use my powers to downsize you, okay? Make it smaller. Make it smaller. All right, now you're down the right size. Okay. And you are gonna learn something today. All right, first preview of our neat, compact, mini 35 amp ESC F7, the SpeedyBee stack, or the other way around, it is the SpeedyBee F7 Mini 35 amp stack. So looking at the flight controller first, you have the USB-C. I love USB-C connectors because everything that I have, or I own, is all USB-C. I hate using the adapters. And looking at the flight controller, you have a notch on the top. So I guess it's actually following Samsung and Apple with the notches, so that you can have more space to plug in the connector, and also you can move the analog or the digital camera. It has wireless on board, but it's actually Bluetooth, not like the SpeedyBee Adapter 3, which has Wi-Fi, so you can't use the Wi-Fi for flashing firmware, but you can use the SpeedyBee app to do all of your settings. In this case, if you don't already have it, inside the box, it has the SpeedyBee QR code for you to download either from the Play Store or the App Store for iPhones. Looking at the bottom, it's just normal, which is the F7 controller. It has a gyro on board. In this case, does it have dual gyro? No, it has only one gyro. And interestingly enough, it actually provides grommets for both the M2 or M3 screws. So in the case where normally for the 20x20 you use the M2 screws, but if you suddenly have a frame that actually has M3 instead, you can then change out these grommets to actually fit in M3. Okay, so the flight controller actually does support both analog and digital. It has an OSD built in for analog, and also it does support digital with 2 BCs, 5V for analog, 9V for the DJI digital. Either use the Air unit or the Cadex Vista, but unfortunately it does not have a DJI connector, so you're gonna have to do a little bit more soldering, which most of the case, if you're using a Cadex Vista, you're gonna have to do it anyway, whether it's Runcam Phoenix or Cadex Vista. So in this case, you will solder on these pads right here. I'm gonna show you the diagram right there. So then you'll be running with digital, but that is unfortunate. I think it's because the limitation of space, they can't put another connector on. In terms of the power that is provided by the ESC, it's interesting that they can put all 35 amps power, but looking at the board right here, it actually has a little bit more empty space for more capacitance. I'm interested to see why they did not fill in those areas. But anyway, the MOSFETs are clearly spaced correctly, and they only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 capacitance. Okay, there's a few here, but if this was a Teco 32, you would see every single connector filled, every single portion of this filled with these capacitance. In terms of how the pads are, it's nice big pads relatively for a mini connector. So if you look here, it's jutted out a little bit, so when you're building the drone or the quad, you do not have to take off the flight controller in order to change out any of the motors. You can actually now have space enough to just solder or desolder on these pads because of the space. For 30x30, usually you would have it exactly above, and you would have to remove the flight controller in order to have access to the ESC. In this case, you don't need to. The battery connectors has these nice holes for capacitors to go in. You can either mount the capacitor top or bottom. Let's see what the box actually has for the connector that they have, or the capacitors. Just open it up. So it comes with a 35 volt 470 microfarad capacitor, and it has XT30. So depending on your build, but most of the time for minis, if you're doing city whoops, this would be the battery leads that you would use. Comes in with this short connector right here, which goes one to the FC, one to the ESC, and should fit no problem, just like that, and just like that. This is the beauty of actually having matching flight controllers with ESCs. You don't have to mess around with the JST connectors right there. Alright, so it's nicely compact, just like that. Alright, so just talking about the ESC and how it works with the flight controller. So the ESC needs its firmware, and this is BL-Heli-S. You may have heard a few issues with BL32 with SpeedyBee, but I believe that's all been sorted out. But in this case, because SpeedyBee wants the SpeedyBee app to be 100% compatible with their stack, they have already upgraded their SpeedyBee app to be able to handle flashing firmware for BL-Heli-S. So you don't need the BL-Heli configurator, you can just use the SpeedyBee app, and you can also then flash BlueJ firmware. BlueJ is basically another version of BL-Heli-S that is an option out there, which has 48 or 96k hertz, and you also have the ability to put bidirectional D-shot. So by being able to do that on the SpeedyBee app is very, very convenient, because now you are definitely 100% non-reliable on the PC. But I do think that because there's no space to put Wi-Fi on here, that basically limits you in terms of flashing firmware. But you know, you can't win them all. You want the smaller size in order to, most of the time, you're going to put on Cineworld. So why would you even spend this amount of money, which actually coincidentally this stack is priced about the same as most of the good stacks out there, the iFlight Twin G Mini or the Mamba Mini Mark III. Is about $96 US, I think the MSRP is. Alright, so which is great, but again, why choose SpeedyBee? Because actually I think that the key thing here is not about whether or not you're going to use the SpeedyBee app, but it actually is whether or not you can have access to your stack. So in this case here, I have this Get RC Synago. In order for me to access, you can see here, this micro connector right there, right? I am actually micro connector right there, if you can see that, okay? I'm actually going to have to use this adapter, L adapter, and with this L adapter I'm going to have to try to fit that in like so. And you imagine doing this in the middle of the field, and assuming I have Android, I can just use the on the go with the SpeedyBee app. But now for the same amount of money, I can instead actually have the SpeedyBee right there in the inside there, and then don't have to fiddle with any connectors. I can just go ahead and connect with the Bluetooth on board and do all my settings. Okay, so what about reliability? Reliability wise, I found that a lot of people have been talking about how good the SpeedyBee F7s are for the full size, and I don't have any reason to believe that this is going to be any different. This is going to be great. But the ESC right here, I think it's interesting that they chose to put BL-S board. That lowers down the cost, but also that removes any complication with BL-32, which is good. But what about the 35 amp strength? So the beauty about SpeedyBee ESCs is they actually publicize the tests results that they have when they run for a full size 45 amp continuously. In this case, 35 amp continuous current, and how does it fare across for a longer duration. So I'm going to show you real quick quick shots of the SpeedyBee test, and you can see the 35 amp ESC can actually truly hold 35 amps. So in the case of Cineworks, 35 amps is plenty. For some 5 inches, 35 amps is plenty too. So I do think that here SpeedyBee has a winner with the F7 Mini 35 amp ESC, right? So go get yours very, very quickly. It's coming out actually yesterday, December 20th. It's going to arrive soon in a store near you, and have fun.